Mr. Chair, would you like us to begin housekeeping?
Yes, Wayne, please.
Thank you.
Thank you for participating in today's meeting. Please do not connect to Zoom or teleconference while in the room, and please silence all devices. Click on the globe at the bottom of your screen to select either English or Spanish. Public comment will be taken after each item.
No.
If you are in the auditorium and wish to comment, please use the iPads located in the lobby. For meetings in other locations, please complete a blue speaker card and provide it to a South Coast AQMD employee. Speakers may be limited to a total of 3 minutes or less for all agenda items, and times may be shortened to ensure all speakers can be heard. A countdown timer will be displayed on the screen for each public comment. Word time will be allotted for Spanish translation that is not simultaneous. For questions or issues on public comment, please call the public advisor at 909-396-3247. That's 909-396-3247. Please adhere to the speaker time limit and treat others with courtesy, civility, and respect. Failure to do so can result in your mic being muted or you being removed from the meeting. Be aware that this meeting is being recorded. By participating, you are authorizing recording of audio and visual content presented during the live event and consent to subsequent use of the recording in the public domain by South Coast AQMD.
Thank you. I'll officially call our hybrid legislative committee meeting to order for Friday, September 13th. It's now a little bit after 9 a.m. and welcome everyone here today, our great staff, our public, our consultants, and my fellow committee members. And I would ask for a roll call from Maria, please.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Mayor Lock-Dawson. Mayor Lock-Dawson. Oh, she's waving here. Supervisor Hackman. Absent. Supervisor Perez.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Rahman. I know she will be joining us shortly. Mayor Solache. Mayor Solache.
Can you hear me now? No?
Yes.
Okay. I'm here, like Dawson.
Thank you.
Here.
Mayor Solache. Absent. Councilmember Caccioti.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Maria. Let's go to item number 1 on our agenda, action discussion items, update on the 2024 South Coast AQMD sponsored state bills. And it's Mr. Derek Alatorre, our Deputy Executive Officer, Legislative, Public Affairs and Media. Derek, go ahead.
Thank you, Councilmember Caccioti. The first one is AB 2522. If you recall, this is regarding air board compensation bill, increasing or basically doubling the amount that board members get for attending air board or AQMD meetings or air district meetings. That bill has been passed by both Senate and the Assembly and is now at the governor's desk. AB 2958 by Assemblymember Calderon. That was a bill that regarding Air Board, California Air Resources Board compensation to have the paid members be paid similar to what the other board members are receiving. That bill was held in Senate Appropriations and essentially is dead for the year. And then the last one that we sponsored was SB 1158 by Senator Archuleta, and that was a Carl Moyer bill. Basically, what it did, that bill allowed us to extend the amount of time to liquidate the contracts. So that bill was passed by both Assembly and Senate and on to the governor. We're waiting for their signatures on that, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. Committee members, any questions for staff? I don't see any hands raised. I'll ask a question unless Supervisor Perez, did you want to ask any questions?
We knew that was going to be a difficult bill. But I appreciate the fact that we attempted, and we'll see where we go with it in the future. Who knows? But at least at a minimum, the others will get a slight increase, which is good for them.
Thank you, Supervisor. Derek, what are your thoughts, or do you have any idea with regard to the success of the governor signing the other two bills, AB 2522 and SB 1158 Barchuleta?
I think they're probably going to be signed. They're not affecting the general funds for the state. It's really up to, as example, the AQMD board compensation. Those are, it's going to be absorbed by the districts. So that's a good one. Then the other one is just really extending dates. So I think it's a very good chance that both of them will be signed. I think the other one that didn't get passed, there's other options. And I talked to Wayne about it for next year. I won't be here, but I did have some ideas on how to get that one done.
Great. So we're going to probably bring that back next legislative. Great idea. Need to support Supervisor Perez and Gideon Krakoff on that. We're behind you, Supervisor. We're still trying. Any other committee members, any questions on those items? I don't see any hands raised here. Is there any public comment on this item? We see none online. And anybody in the auditorium want to speak on public comment? Okay, we'll move on to item number 2, and that's update on key position bills. And that's by Philip Crabb III, Senior Public Affairs Manager, Legislative, Public Affairs and Media. Philip, go ahead, please, sir.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. Today, I will present regarding 3 key bills which negatively impact air district resources and/or air quality efforts, which warranted opposition based on South Coast AQMD's 2024 state legislative guiding principles. First, we have AB 98 by Assemblymember Juan Carrillo relating to warehouses. This was a very late gut and amend in the year that a lot of stakeholders did not have a chance to provide any input on. It would prohibit cities and counties from approving new or expanded logistic uses unless they meet specified standards, require cities and counties to update their circulation elements to include truck routes, and imposed multiple unfunded mandates on South Coast AQMD. Specifically, South Coast AQMD must, by January 1st, 2026 until January 1st, 2032, deploy mobile air monitoring within Riverside and San Bernardino counties in communities near warehouses. According to the bill, South Coast AQMD would also need to conduct air modeling analysis to evaluate the impact of air pollution on sensitive receptors and eventually submit findings to the legislature by January 1st, 2033. AB 98 would also require South Coast AQMD to establish a special public process for receiving input on how the WARE program penalties would be spent or have been spent. The monitoring and modeling study proposed by AB 98 would require extensive work and divert limited air district resources over the course of many years. These efforts would cost likely several $1 million. South Coast AQMD has already conducted extensive mobile monitoring as part of AB 617 efforts and has conducted comprehensive monitoring and modeling analysis as part of our MATE studies. Consequently, this study is unnecessarily costly and duplicative. Further, the prescriptive approach dictating how South Coast AQMD should conduct outreach relating to penalties from a single rule is problematic and sets a bad precedent. Next, we have AB 1122 Baines relating to commercial harbor craft. This bill would require diesel particulate filters installed on commercial harbor craft to include an override or bypass safety system. It would authorize the operators of those vessels to activate the bypass system during an emergency. More importantly, the bill would also delay the compliance dates in CARB's commercial harbor craft rule for certain commercial harbor crafts to replace or retrofit their engines, and it would delay it until their next inspection by the U.S. Coast Guard, or no later than 30 months, well, that's about 2.5 years, after the original compliance date. CARB's regulatory approach is designed specifically to address requirements in the Clean Air Act, and South Coast AQMD relies on these regulations when we prepare our portions of the SIPs to achieve critical emission reductions within the South Coast region. In our PM 2.5 plan that was adopted in June 2024, CARB's commercial harbor craft rule alone provides about 7% of total emission reductions from CARB for both NOx and direct PM 2.5 emissions. These emission reductions are needed no later than 2030. The proposed legislation would delay these needed emission reductions, which would leave a shortfall in our SIP obligation to the US EPA. Also, South Coast AQMD has been in communication with CARB staff about the issue regarding the diesel particulate filters, and we are confident that this issue can be addressed through CARB's careful implementation of their current regulation in partnership with the U.S. Coast Guard rather than through AB 1122. Consequently, AB 1122 is both duplicative and unnecessary, as well as harmful to South Coast AQMD's efforts to improve air quality and protect public health in the South Coast region. Requests for veto letters to the governor have been sent regarding both AB 98 and AB 1122. Lastly, we have AB 1296 by Assemblymember Grayson, which relates to an exemption for pilot station boats. This bill would allow 3 San Francisco Bay pilot boats to delay compliance from CARB's commercial harborcraft rule requirements until at the end of their useful life, which is likely around 2030 to 2040. This bill essentially circumvents state and local air quality authority by exempting 3 boats and sets a precedent for other regulated sources to seek legislative remedies versus working with state and local air agencies. While the bill would only apply to and exempt 3 vessels that are not in the South Coast region, the exemption would create a bad precedent of allowing legislation to be a workaround for needed regulations that reduce air pollution. Further, it is our understanding that CARB already has an extension process to address this unique circumstance. So staff will be sending a letter to the governor requesting a veto of AB 1296 as well. And that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Philip. Thorough presentation. Committee members, any questions for Philip? Seeing none from the supervisor or the mayor. I have no questions. Is there any public comment?
Mr. Chair, there's 2 raised hands online.
Thank you, Wayne. We'll go to the first public comment. You've got 3 minutes on this item. It looks like R. Soto. Go ahead, please. You're on mute. R. Soto, you're on mute. You have 3 minutes to speak. We'll come back to you. Harvey Etter. Harvey, you can go first. You've got 3 minutes on this item. Harvey, go ahead, please.
Good morning. Am I being heard?
Good morning, Harvey. You are welcome. You are being heard.
Thank you. Basically, I'd like to know the history of what's happening with this thing with the that they're trying to put on the district. Where does this come from about the indirect source rule and all this stuff? I don't know the history. I'd like it to explain to me, please. So I only spoke 15, 20 seconds. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Harvey. We'll address that at the end. And R. Soto, would you like to speak? You've got 3 minutes. You're on mute again. I'll give you one last chance. If anybody else wants to speak, R. Soto, you have an opportunity to speak for 3 minutes. And I'll close the public comment portion of this item, and then maybe staff can address. I'm not sure I understood Harvey's question, Wayne.
We too did not understand the question.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Harvey. So we'll close out on this item and move to discussion items. Number 3, update and discussion on federal legislative issues. First is Jed Dearborn with Cassidy Associates. Jed, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mayor Cacchiotti and members of the committee for the opportunity to provide this report. Congress's focus this month is on passing a continuing resolution before the fiscal year ends on September 30th. The House is going to be the first to move, and they have a vote planned next week for a CR that funds the government at current levels through March 28th, 2025. The vehicle for the CR does contain a couple policy riders, including the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, which requires proof of U.S. citizenship to vote in federal elections, and $10 billion for the FEMA Disaster Relief Fund. This bill is viewed as a partisan effort by House Republicans, and it is opposed by the White House and congressional Democrats, who would prefer a rider-free bill that expires sometime mid-December so that there's an opportunity for an end of the 118th Congress large legislative package. The vote next week in the House is going to be very tight. It's expected to be partisan, and the Republicans only have a 4-seat majority, and a lot of factions within the party are dissatisfied with the bill for a variety of reasons. So this one's going to be a nail-biter for Speaker Johnson. In the Senate, the intel I've heard is that they're working on a bipartisan CR that goes through December 13th, but they're going to wait for the House to vote before proceeding. So, as always, Congress is running smoothly, and this CR will likely come down to the wire, as it always seems to do. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Jed. We'll come back in a moment. Let's go to Mark Kadish. Mark with Kadish.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, members of the committee. I'll build on Jed's, I think, accurate description of Congress. There are a number of things that, in addition to the CR, that need to be done by the end of the year, including the Defense Authorization Act, the
Mark, we're losing you.
just another few weeks before the election. This week, the House of Representatives has done China Week, passed 24 bills on China, none of which will become law. And next week, we'll be having what they call Woke Week. I'm not sure what that legislation is going to look like, but they're not going to take up any of the must-pass legislation. The Senate, in the meantime, is dealing primarily with judges and with message bills like IVF and other election related issues. So we anticipate that really nothing other than the CR will get done prior to their breaking for the election, and that when they come back in November, the disposition of all of these bills will really depend on the outcome of the Senate, of the presidential and congressional elections, to see what will be done. In the meantime, we continue to work with the other consultants and with South Coast staff to monitor things that are important to us, like the special district legislation, regulatory reform, and all of the appropriations bills that have yet to be enacted. And we'll provide you with an update when Congress gets back in November and hopefully turns to the process of legislating once again. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. We'll go to Gary before we take any questions on the federal side. Gary, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome members of the committee. I want to do a quick update on several of the federal grant opportunities that we are keeping an eye on here going in towards the end of the year. First on our list would be the Clean Ports program out of the EPA. We are expecting an announcement about those grants here very shortly. Could be this month, early next month. That's what we're looking at right now. These are very significant grants, and we'll keep a close eye on that. Secondly, the Clean Heavy Duty Vehicles grant program also is nearing the time when it's going to be announcing their grants. Probably they're looking at November as the time frame for that. This is a very significant program for zero and near zero clean trucks and that sort of thing. And special additional money is in that program for non-attainment areas. So we're watching that very closely. Also, a couple of grant notices that are still pending. The Reconnecting Communities pilot program out of DOT is the applications are closing on September 30th of this year, and also the Environmental and Climate Justice grant program deadline is the November 21st. So we're keeping an eye on that. And I did want to make one quick comment about the very, very significant airport grants that have been announced over the last several months, really. The DOT, the Federal Aviation Administration, putting out a lot of money into airports around the country. Most recent announcement was here last week, up to $40 million for Los Angeles International Airport, including money in there for zero emission battery electric buses, that sort of thing. Total of like 36 airports in California, part of that grant announcement the other day. So I'll just conclude there. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Gary. Committee members, any questions for our federal consultants?
Yeah, I have a question, Mr. Chair, for Gary. Can you elaborate a little bit more on the the environmental change or environmental justice and climate change grant? What does that actually do, or what are they asking for?
Well, these are grants to help communities have clean energy things, and I think there's a total of $2 billion available in that program. This is a program that's coming out of the Inflation Reduction Act, so it's got a lot of money in it, and I think the maximum grant under that program is $20 million for each, and they expect to put out a number of grants there. But clean energy and clean communities, I don't know all the details, but be happy to look into that a little further.
Yeah, look into a little further, and obviously if it has anything to do with climate change, I'd like to see how we could tap into it if that's at all possible.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Mayor Lock Dawson, I see your hand raised. Mayor?
Hi, yes, thank you. I just had a question, Gary, on the airport grants, you said 26, we're in California, 36. Is that program coming to an end? Will there be an additional round of funding opportunities, and then were they all, can you kind of summarize what you said LA got I think electric buses, but what did other airports get?
Well, all kinds of airport improvement technologies there. Noise mitigation is a big thing with a lot of these. These are infrastructure grants as well that have to do with improving airport runways and taxiways. And then there are also airport infrastructure grants, but then there's airport improvement grants for terminals. And there's a lot of emphasis on clean energy and mitigating emissions wherever they can with the equipment at the airports, that sort of thing.
And do you know if there will be additional funding opportunities, additional?
Yes, absolutely. I think there'll be more announcements to come. Absolutely.
All right, thank you so much.
Thanks, Mayor. Gary, if you can keep us updated on those and maybe an update with staff. Great. I see a hand raised at LA City Hall. Councilmember Rahman, please.
Thank you so much, and apologies for being late to the start of this meeting. Gary, I had a similar question to the mayor. In your report, you had mentioned that there were rebates for clean school buses that were won by school districts across the state of California, but not in Los Angeles. And I just wondered whether you could talk a little bit more about that program, whether there's additional opportunities for funding, and why Los Angeles or other districts in this region may not have been selected.
Yeah. I can't say exactly why that would be. These are applications that the DOT, the FAA runs through their own calculations on it. That's something I would be happy to look into for you. I really can't answer that more specifically right now.
Okay. Yeah, I would be appreciative of, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Councilmember, I think we have a little light to shed. Lisa?
Please.
Oh, good morning, members of the committee. So the LAUSD and many of our other school districts received funding from the no zero emissions bus program earlier in the grant process, and we can pull all of those stats and provide that to the committee for you. But we have received funding to our region from that program. In fact, Administrator Reagan and then Senator Harris had come out to promote that program, as well as Senator Padilla.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you. And just a follow-up question was just about whether there's additional opportunities to apply for this funding going forward. Following on Mayor Lock Dawson's question about the other program. I think, Gary, this might be a question for you.
Yeah, I think definitely there's going to be future opportunities. These are programs that some of them are geared over a 5-year period. So we're watching that very closely. And one of the issues that we have is that we want to protect that money going forward in terms of the appropriations and efforts by some in Congress that want to delete money from these programs. So that's something we're watching very closely.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Thank you, Gary. Any more questions for our consultants or staff on this item? Okay, is there any public comment on the discussion item 3, federal legislative issues? If you want to comment in the public, please raise your hand. You'll have 3 minutes. Give you a moment. I don't see anybody in the public raising their hands. Is there anybody in the auditorium? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment on item number 3. We'll move to item number 4, update discussion on state legislative issues. And our first speaker is Ross Buckley. Ross, go ahead, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and board members. The 2024 legislative session wrapped up in the early morning hours of September 1st this year. Typically in even numbered years, we have the midnight deadline on August 31st with very limited reasons of why it could go over that midnight deadline. Another oddity of this year's calendar or unique scheduling conflict was that the 31st landed on a Saturday. So that meant that both houses were in session on Saturday, August 31st. With the voter approved 72-hour imprint rule, during the last week of session, really a lot of that focus turns to when is 72 hours before that midnight deadline. So that this year is Wednesday, which people watching very closely on when bills were being amended on Wednesday night into the early evening. I think the last bill went into print on Wednesday at 10:06 p.m. So that meant that bill couldn't be taken up on the last day of session, which was Saturday, and literally the last 2 hours of session. So it was really focused on those bills. The last night of session ended up being fairly chaotic. To highlight this, the Assembly, with 50 minutes to go before that midnight deadline, received 45 bills back from the Senate. Typically, that would mean that a number of bills would not pass because doing 45 bills in 50 minutes is almost unheard of on the Assembly floor, especially when you have several controversial bills in there. But they ended up limiting the debate to only 30 seconds on each bill, and they're able to move through that stack of bills and meet that midnight deadline. As the bills head to the governor's desk, last week he announced that he was going to review 991 bills. Since September 1st, he's only signed 20 bills and vetoed 2 bills. We obviously expect a dramatic pickup in those numbers over the next few days. One interesting note in terms of what he's done is he has not signed any Senate bills. He's only vetoed 1 bill, which may be some of the signs of some lingering tension between the legislative leaders. And I know the other consultants are going to get into what some of those causes may be. That completes my report, and happy answering questions.
Thanks, Ross. We'll come back to you. Paul Gonzalez with Joe Gonzalez and Son. Paul, go ahead, please.
Well, good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. Pleasure to be with you this morning. I just wanted to provide the committee with a brief update on AB 98 by Assemblymember Carrillo and Reyes, the warehouse bill that Philip had touched on earlier. As Philip mentioned, AB 98 was a gut and amend that was done 3 days prior to the end of session, just in time to clear that 72-hour imprint rule. And like many stakeholders, we had no seat at the table during the negotiations on this legislation. It was done very much quietly and behind the scenes. If we did have a seat at the table, we possibly could have helped eliminate many of the problematic provisions and requirements that will ultimately drain the district resources and hurt air quality efforts in your district. As far as our efforts, we spent the last 3 days of session hyper-focused on this bill as the district had taken an opposed position on it. On August 29th, the bill was heard in the Senate Local Government Committee for the first time. The bill did pass out of that committee and was passed on to the Senate Appropriations Committee the very next day on August 30th. After passing the Appropriations Committee, the bill was brought up on the Senate floor on the last day of session on August 31st in the morning. We were able to hold the first roll call to 17 votes. They needed 21 to pass. We held it to 17 ayes and 15 noes. Unfortunately, leadership had worked the membership, and ultimately the bill squeaked by on a vote of 22-16. The bill then moved over to the Assembly the very same day, obviously being the last day of session, and the bill went straight to the Assembly floor and bypassed the Assembly Policy and Fiscal Committees in the Assembly. They waived the rules for the bill to be heard in those policy and fiscal committees. The first roll call on the Assembly floor went up, and again, we had the bill held at 36-15, with them needing 41 votes to pass. And again, leadership worked the members, and 35 minutes prior to midnight, final adjournment, the bill received the necessary votes to pass 46-17. So the bill is now before the governor for his consideration, and he has until September 30th to take final action. Obviously, we are working very closely with your management team and your legislators on a veto request from the governor, and we will keep you apprised as things progress. I just want to quickly switch over to highlight some of the upcoming legislative deadlines. Now that the legislature is out of session, there's not a lot of things on the calendar, but did want to kind of give you a brief update on what's going to happen over the next 3 months. Obviously, August 31st was the last day of session, and the governor has until the end of this month to take action on all of those bills that are presented to him. November 5th is the general election. And then on December 2nd, the legislature will return for their ceremonial swearing in of the new members from the November 5th general election, with the expectation of January 6th, 2025, for the legislature to reconvene for the 2025 and 2026 legislative session. So once that calendar is out and finalized, we will make sure we update you on the 2025 legislative deadlines. But for now, that is the end of my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Paul. We'll come back to you. And then final, David Quintana with Resolute. David, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you, sir. What I'd like to let the board know is that the governor has called for a second extraordinary session focused on refinery reserves, maintenance, and the corresponding price impact to California consumers through the price of gasoline. I think what Ross was alluding to is what I'll touch on now. Initially, the Senate Pro Tem said he wasn't going to participate, but what they've done now is they've worked out kind of a system, whereas the Assembly is going to tackle these bills first. They're going to hold informational hearings in late September, a policy committee on September 26th, and a floor session on October 1st. What the Pro Tem has now said is that they were going to initiate the special session in the Senate once the Assembly passes the proposal over to them. So very interesting. I haven't seen this before since I've been in the since I've been a lobbyist, but interesting approach. Two bills have been introduced, AB X21, which creates a 6-member expert advisory committee, which will advise the Energy Commission to set requirements for refineries regarding maintenance and unplanned downtime. And then there's AB X22, which was introduced by the Republicans, which will suspend the gas tax. So that is where we are. And that concludes my.
Thank you, David. Committee members, any questions for our state consultants? I don't see any hands raised. Just a question on the AB 98 by Jay Carrillo regarding the logistics and our requirements to do studies. Where is Jay Carrillo from, and what's pushing this bill? Do we know? If you can let us know, does anybody know?
I do, Mr. Chair.
Oh, good. Go ahead.
So this has been an effort, a multi-year effort by Assemblymember Reyes, who's a co-author on the bill. She had AB 1000 in the past. So this was another attempt, another bite at the apple, so to say, for Assemblymember Reyes. And she's from the Riverside, San Bernardino area, so she has a lot of the warehouses in her district. Assemblymember Carrillo, who's the chair of the Assembly Local Government Committee, is from the Palmdale area. So that's where it kind of originated from, and it's been a multi-year effort on their behalf.
Thank you. Philip, do you want to add to that, or is that okay?
No, that sounds good. Thanks.
Okay. Committee members, any questions? I do see Mayor Lock Dawson. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Nithya Raman. Councilmember Rahman, I saw your hand up.
And I just wanted to ask, I know the bill changed quite a bit in these, or changed somewhat in the last moments. I just wondered whether you could shed a little bit of light on the changes and what the implications of those changes are.
Well, so in particular, AB 98 was a gut and amend, so it completely gutted the previous bill and put in this new bill very last minute. And sometimes it's a tactic that's used to kind of try to force a bill through at the very end of session. And in this case, they were at least partially successful getting it through the legislature, and it depends what the governor does. But it was a kind of a complete deletion and addition of content.
Mayor Salachi?
I actually had a similar question to Councilwoman about the implications, but what specifically do we look forward to impacting our agency specifically? I wasn't clear about that answer yet.
So essentially, this is a bill that creates unfunded mandates, on the South Coast specifically. And kind of as mentioned previously, there's a extensive study air monitoring that's going to be required over a period of years. It's going to cost millions of dollars. And we feel that it is duplicative of the studies and monitoring we've already done through AB 617 and through the MATE study. And then also it creates a public process specifically on the WARE program penalties and how they're spent. But we already have existing public processes, and having something specifically for just one single rule is really a bad precedent and not an appropriate way to go, in our opinion.
All right. Chairperson, if I could just ask one follow-up question here to my.
Please.
Sorry to jump in, but I just wondered whether you could be a little bit more specific about, because I understand our air district's concerns about unfunded mandates, but there were concerns across the board about this bill. Were any of those, can you talk about whether those questions that had come up about the bill were addressed in the changes that were made? Because what you're describing was in the original version of the bill. This was why we had originally taken an opposed position to it. What ended up in the final version of the bill? I'm still not clear. And Mayor Salachi, I'm not sure if you're clear either.
We're saying the same thing, Nithya, because I'm still confused about what the implications of the changes essentially are. We know what the bill does, and I thank you for highlighting that again. But what is a new change? What does that mean for us and the bill itself?
So apologies. Just to be clear, one thing, the bill originally related to agricultural cotton pests abatement districts. So that was completely deleted. But the new version that was added as a part of the gut and amend, it would prohibit cities and counties from approving new and expanded logistic uses unless they meet certain standards, and would require cities and counties to update their circulation elements to include truck routes. And then it would do the imposition of unfunded mandates on South Coast. So we were more focused on the part that directly impacted South Coast. Since we don't have the authority on land use issues, we were less focused on some of the other setback requirements and things like that were part of the bill that's being imposed statewide. I hope that's clear.
Mayor Lock-Dawson has a question.
Not a question, but a comment. But I know, to Councilmember Rahman's point, one of the reasons why the city of Riverside we submitted an opposed letter was that transportation element, that circulation element, which I think was an add. I don't think that was in the original bill, to the extent that it was with the amount of penalties that were to be levied against cities when they fell out of compliance. So I know that was a big one for that came in. That wasn't, I don't believe, in the first round. So I just add to that, not necessarily an air quality issue, but a sort of a municipal issue. And then also it was made the penalties different for cities within Riverside and San Bernardino counties.
Thank you for that clarification. That's helpful.
Paul, did you want to say anything following up on this, since you kind of followed the bill through the last stages?
The only other thing I would add is that the difference between, I think what you're comparing is the prior version of the bill, AB 1000, compared to AB 98, which was the gut and amend. And I think Philip and everybody's done a very good job of summarizing where it's at. The only other difference I would highlight is that the AB 1000 had a 500-foot buffer zone, where AB 98 has a 900-foot buffer zone. But again, the penalties were new. It's kind of funny that one of the few stakeholders that were not at the table are the only stakeholders that have penalties attached to them in the bill. But other than that, I think everything else was summarized very well. It's not as strong as AB 1000 was, but still very concerning for a lot of local governments.
Any other consultants want to comment on that? No. Okay. Any more questions, follow-up, committee members? See no hands raised. We'll go to public comment. And I see there was one hand raised. We'll go to public comment now. Harvey Etter. Harvey, you've got 3 minutes on this item. Go ahead, Harvey.
Basically, we want to incorporate the reference articles on the LA Times. One about DWP. You got a new director there, was with the investor-owned utilities, and they say they want a consultant to work on community solar. They can do this with public power. So we were a consultant in '79 with Bradley's office, funded by the gas company. And I'm working on community solar. We want to put those out, Raman, and try to get a hold of your office to no avail. So this is a shout out to you specifically. Also for the governor, also LA Times. There was an article that said, and it was, I believe it might have been opinion, but it said that there's increases at electric rates of $800 or more, 1/3 of low income for the state, and 1 out of 5 for everybody. There's going to be a ratepayer revolt. It concluded, we had to study public power. This was public power. PG&E went bankrupt twice so far in this century, and a couple $100 billion by the state water. Okay, this is enough. They say that there's going to be a ratepayer revolt, and it has to be studied. They put a shout out from the governor.
Mr. Etter, you need to be commenting on the item that's on the agenda, which is the state legislative issues reports that we received from the consultants.
Harvey, if you can just limit your comments to those items as described by the attorney. Go ahead, Harvey. You can finish up. You're on mute. Wrap up. Go ahead.
This is hard with public power. Purging the people doesn't cut it, folks. You got serious problems. You're a captured agent. It's a Stigler, Nobel Economics 82. This is really important stuff. You got to listen. You got to respond and not purge us and cut us off. I'm real pissed. I'm not going to continue anymore right now. Bye.
Thank you, Harvey, for your comments. Any more comments? See none online and see none in the auditorium. Move on to other matters. Item number 5 is other business. Committee members, any other business? I see a hand raised from Mayor Loch Dawson.
Hi, yeah, just kind of related to Supervisor Perez's work on climate. Is anybody from AQMD planning on attending COP, the next COP in Azerbaijan coming up in November? I was just curious.
We are not planning to attend the COP conference. There were a number of logistical challenges and other concerns related to the location. So we're not planning to attend COP this year.
It is not easy to get into Azerbaijan.
Where's that one located? Did we discuss that one?
Yes.
Yeah. It's located where again? Can you remind me what?
Near Iran?
Yeah, no, we're not going.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was interested in going. I thought it's going to be protected, I think, by the UN, but we'll see. I know next year is coming up. Will be it's in Brazil, and I think it's going to be even more interesting. It'll be a big one because it'll be the anniversary of the signing. So anyway, I just was curious. Okay, thank you very much.
And Mayor, we are planning to attend next year's.
Okay.
Thanks, Mayor. Any other business by committee members? Seeing no hands raised, we'll move on to final public comment period. Public comment on items that are under our jurisdiction as a legislative committee. Any public comment online? See none. I see no public comment in the auditorium. And our next meeting is October 11th, second Friday in October, 9 a.m. And I'll officially adjourn this meeting, wishing everyone a great weekend. Take care.